quickly ask a question to everyone, and I will be expecting a reply on our chat box. And the question is, after conducting your research and publishing, what next? What do you do after publishing? I'll be interested to read your responses to these. And I don't know if the host has permitted me to share my screen. If that is done, I can go right ahead and share my presentation with you all.
You can share your screen.
Okay. I believe we can all see my screen. So just as the host and the moderator had indicated, my name is Alvin Lontum, and I am telling you these stories all the way from Cameroon in Central Africa. So the innovation we are using is blended from Pidgin, and it is called Evidence Story Day. Evidence Story Day, we can translate it as talking evidence or telling evidence stories. So in this presentation, I'll be looking at how we told stories to promote knowledge, to improve knowledge, self-efficacy, intentions in institutions of learning in what in other places what we call a county, we call it a division in Cameroon called Mesam Division. So the presentation is not going to be long. It is brief, the importance of stories, and then how innovatively we tell stories. That is what we'll be looking at for most of this presentation. So how are stories important, or why are stories important? Stories convey information and knowledge in a way. If they are well done, they convey knowledge and information in a very non-conflict manner. You are able to pass information to people and knowledge, even if it goes against what they initially hold or what they initially think, they are able to accept because it is non-violent. Or yeah, it's non-violent. There's that possibility for stories to evoke very strong emotions, and the stories can create connections with a practice, with some persons, because the way stories are told, stories can be told through dances, through songs, through dramas, or just through poetry. So there are some people that have become famous, for example, in Africa, through the stories they have acted, and some people have, become hated because of the stories they have participated in. We have, for people who have watched Nollywood movies, the famous Patience Osuoko and the people like Kanayo, and because of the stories, there are strong emotions that these stories they have told, they have created, and there are some people that are more connected to some actors and actresses because of the stories they have told in one way or another. There's that possibility for stories to preserve traditions. In Cameroon, for example, I don't know about other countries of Africa, but in Cameroon, there is this strong belief that the gizzard of a fowl is that part of a chicken that should be eaten by only men. And recently I was having these talks with men, and men think that it is rightfully what differentiates them from the women if they eat the gizzard and the women don't eat. So, but through the stories, they will now tell their children about the gizzards. it is going to preserve tradition. I'm just taking this for example. There are things, and even some of them that are harmful traditions or harmful traditional practices that have been passed on to generations through storytelling. For example, a family would not outrightly start talking about female genital mutilation or breast ironing, but they will tell you a story of how it started or how it has been happening or why it has been happening. They will pass you through stories. They will not just get up and tell you that this is this, this is this. They will not bring it in a systematic or in a scientific manner. They will just narrate a story. And that is what has been what storytelling has been doing. It has been preserving traditions, even the traditions that are harmful to ourselves. So at eBase, we are trying to harness this storytelling and make it harmless and instead useful. So storytelling can help preserve traditions, beliefs, and experiences. And then there are stories that can actually motivate people to do certain things. A lot of people who have not read history, at least they have heard or listened to the story of Mandela. It can inspire them. It can motivate them to know that wherever they are, they can still do more than they are currently doing. So stories have that power to motivate and inspire individuals. And do I need to say that stories shape our identities? There are certain things. If I if I if I say something, if I tell a story and I call somebody Chale, for example, I know that people in Ghana will relate. And if my story has a part that says, for example, Igbo Kweno, people from Igbo land in Nigeria, they are definitely going to relate because the story is having what they can identify with. So it's indirectly shaping their identities. And we have this famous storyteller who hails from Africa, from Nigeria, Ben Okri, who says stories are the secret reservoir of values. Change the stories individuals and nations live by and tell themselves, and you change individuals and nations. So it's like the world where we are today, we are sometimes parenting today has actually changed because what the children today are exposed to, decades ago, the children we had were not exposed to the same thing. And what they read online is actually what is changing them to behave the way children are behaving today. And it is just because of that is how strong stories are. Children now have people they prefer to read from, and the more they read from those people, the more they are influenced. So you want to actually watch the kind of people your children are reading from, because as you have seen, or as we can see from Ben Opry, uh, the stories they listen to actually change them to become those stories. He goes ahead to say that, yes, beware the stories you read or tell. Softly at night, beneath the waters of consciousness, they are altering your world. You are seeing yourself in that story. The more you listen to some people, the more there are some people who have watched a lot of videos from Kevin Samuels, and it has altered the way they behave, the way they reason, the way they react to certain things. So stories have those great powers. I don't know. There is this relationship I have with Ben Opry and his quotes that I cannot move a step without quoting him. He said, at the heart of all sciences, its experiments, its theories, its mathematics, its discoveries, interpretations, is the story instinct. In Africa, there are lots of dishes, different, and people who have access to eating from the forest. You begin to wonder what provoked somebody to go into the forest and discover a leaf that we are using to cook food or a spice that we're using to cook food. It's like you are asking yourself, or the first person that discovered ogbono seed or the mango fruit, what was the person doing? You start imagining what must have pushed the person to discover this. You will know, or you will conclude that there's a story behind everything. They will tell you a story. Maybe they were very hungry, or maybe they had eaten something that had become, I think, monotonous, was boring, and they wanted to change. So behind every discovery, behind every new thing is a story. So stories are that great. Now, I have at least given some background to stories and the strength stories possess. Uh, how do we tell stories now differently from the way our parents used to sit by the fireside with some nuts and palm wine, and then in the evening after having a long day in the farm, everybody is back in the home, fire is made, everybody is gathered, and then the story night starts. The difference is our parents used to just imagine the stories. Some of them were just fiction. Some of them were ways to just pass on their traditions. And because these traditions were not written, some of the things we know today, we know them because we were told. You cannot read it anywhere. And it is in our interest uh, for us to publish those things so that people will not continue attacking us where we are getting these from. So we must start publishing this. So our storytelling begins from a community diagnosis. A community diagnosis permits us to know where a community is on a particular topic. If we are talking about climate change, if we are talking about the use of plastics, if we are talking about going green, you want to find out how much your audience know about the topic. If people already know about climate change and they are having challenges respecting or doing what is best practice, is different from people who don't know at all. So the stories you will tell the people who don't know about climate change, the stories are different from the stories you will tell people who already know about climate change, but they lack the means to implement it. Some people want to use, for example, some people want to stop using generators for power. Some people want to stop using fuel, coal. A lot of people may like to go green, but maybe it is the means, or they don't even know how they can go green. So the stories you will tell will now be from the diagnosis. And if you don't also do a correct diagnosis, you'll also be telling a wrong story. I'll share a short story again. The experience we had before we had to improve on our storytelling approach. There was a community that had a high prevalence rate of malaria in the littoral of Cameroon. And we felt that they did not know about mosquito nets. We just assumed, like a lot of NGOs do, we assumed that they did not know about mosquito bed nets, and went there and we did a storytelling session, telling them lots of good things about the mosquito bed nets. And then we left and came back to evaluate the impact our stories had created or had made in the community. And we discovered that the malaria prevalence rate had not changed. This was because the community members took the bed nets and they were using it for something else. They had their vegetables they had cultivated beside the houses that they wanted to prevent the birds from eating, and some took the nets to fish with. So they took the bed nets to catch their fish. So their problem, we did not understand their problem. We just assumed their problem and we were solving. They said they already knew about the mosquito bed nets, just that they did not have enough to use. So they actually needed enough mosquito bed nets so that they will have those to use in their homes, and enough that they can take some to catch their fish, because hunger was their biggest problem and not even malaria. So you must be able to do this diagnosis within the community and not from a distance. Let them tell you what their problem is. Let them, from what they will tell you, you'll be able to know now that and conclude that this is their problem, and you can start now solving it with your storytelling. It is true that you could actually get a problem that giving just knowledge will not be enough. If they already know, you now know if it is something that you need to look for a grant that can provide, if it is services or goods to change the situation. So storytelling does not solve everything. It can build intentions, it can build knowledge and intentions for people to adopt a particular behavior, but it will not do everything. But it's important that you diagnose the community well, know where they are, and to do a perfect community diagnosis, we use what we call the trans-theoretical model of change. It has 5 steps. There is what we call the pre-contemplation or the denial stage, where people are actually zero on a particular practice or behavior, or they are refusing it. For example, when I go to schools and I am, for example, I'm talking about gender-based violence, and I give a definition of rape, and including in it that a man can also be raped. There is a lot of debate. I get counter responses where they tell me that no, it's not possible. Yes, that a man can never be raped. So with such communities, you can actually tell that for that practice, they are in denial. So you have to tell them a story that will remove them from that stage to at least a stage above that stage. So after denial or pre-contemplation, now you have the contemplation. Contemplation is where there is at least some knowledge or acceptance of the best practice, but it is not yet happening in their lives. They are not actively doing it. So they are in contemplation. If they know that, for example, condoms are good, condoms will prevent teenagers from getting pregnant and STIs, but they are not yet using it. Then we have the action. After contemplation is action. Action are people who are active. No. After contemplation is preparation, where you are now making active plans to start doing the best practice. So from talking with the community, it could be a Delphi survey. You are able to tell what the community is planning to do, where they are. If they are planning to start doing what the best practice, or they are planning to adopt the right behavior, you can say that they are in preparation. Then after preparation, we have the action. Action is where they are actually doing the best practice. Then after the action, some people will do the action as long as you hang around. It's the action to some people, or in some people, is never sustainable. So you have to do follow-up to maintain them in that stage of action, so that they stay there. If not, they will backslide and start living as if they don't even know about the best practice. So I've talked about pre-contemplation, I've talked about contemplation, I've talked about preparation, I've talked about action, and I've talked about maintenance. So that is all that comes in the community diagnosis. If you know that these people are already doing these things, you just need to maintain them. The stories you will tell are going to be different from the stories you will tell people who are preparing to start doing it, or people who are still in denial. So when you have identified the problem, now you now do your research. You now look for evidence about that topic. Is it how maybe farming practices are affecting the climate? Whatever topic of interest you want to communicate to your community. Maybe you want to talk about best farming practices that can improve yields. And you look for the research, you conduct your research now, and then you do your evidence synthesis. From what you bring from their research now, from the research, you can now, because generally, as I asked the first question, that when you publish, what happens? When people see grants, they want to impress funders. They do everything to write a very convincing grant. Oh, we are going to do this, we publish. And then the people that give you the data to publish your paper, when you are done publishing, these people don't even know what you found. They cannot consume what they were part of. And even when it is published, it's published in some journals that they have to pay. Some of these people don't have access to electricity. Some of them don't have the gadgets to read what you have published. So at the end, it is you and the funder's business. But you were, because when you are going to talk to communities to get their data, you are telling them that, oh, you are doing a research, you are trying to add something to science. And they're expecting that you should come back and tell them that this is what we found. Maybe this is what you do. But for the most times, it does not happen. When you are done publishing, you are done. If it was for a thesis in school, you have passed the required mark, you are excited for the next phase of your life, and whatever happens to that community is none of your businesses. Until another person will go again, maybe and tweak the topic and change and go and collect something similar, go again, develop, publish, and communities who don't have the opportunity or who are not educated will just keep being in the dark, and we wonder why there is no progress. We have to reach these people, especially the non-literate people. So we now, from this evidence synthesis, we look at how can we break down the scientific jargons that are published in these journals. What we publish are usually in very high terms. How can we get the local man to understand? If you are looking at the impact of a chemical or chemical compound in Cameroon, there is what they call limestone. I think they call it locally they call it kangwa in local parlance. And I don't know, limestone, for people who are very, very science inclined, I think limestone is calcium carbonate. And imagine you telling somebody in a local parlance maybe how to produce kangma or what kangma does. But when you come and you are telling that if you add 4 grams of calcium carbonate, some of those terms already, they just remove a lot of people from even following you. They know that they cannot digest it. So we have to break our evidence statements. The evidence statements now are the statements that the storytellers must have in their story. Now, this is broken down to plain, like simple English that a commoner can understand. And we make sure that our storytellers, the way they tell the stories, they are able to break the words down even in pidgin or in the local languages that the community members can understand exactly what it is all about. So after developing the evidence statements, all of these, the community diagnosis, the evidence synthesis, and evidence statements from the research papers that have been found, the next phase is co-creation of stories. In eBase Africa, we describe it as when 2 rivers meet, because all of the community diagnosis up to the evidence statements is developed by the researchers, the librarians, and the researchers. We call them the scientists. That is the river of science. Then now the artist has to come in and join the scientists to develop the story. Now we have the storytellers, people who have a storytelling background. After producing this is where this community is. These are the evidence statements we need you to use and move this community from this stage of change to this other stage of change. We'll now sit together and tell them that this is this, and they write their stories. We call it co-creation. And they write their stories depending on the audience. Do we want to improve policy? Are we targeting policymakers? Are we targeting children? Are we targeting the old people? Are we targeting parents? We're targeting indigenous communities. Whatever is our audience also dictates what storytelling approach we are taking. Is it going to be dance? Is it going to be slam? Is it going to be poetry? Is it going to be drama? Is it just going to be storytelling, as in somebody standing up and narrating a story? Is it going to be yes, I've talked about songs. So whatever the audience is what will guide the type of stories that the storytellers now tell. Now, after telling the story, we want to evaluate the impact of these stories. We build our questions depending on where we identified as the stage where the community is found on the model of change. If we found that the community is in pre-contemplation, we'll develop a questionnaire, a pre-test questionnaire that will cover issues around their denial of that topic. And then after telling the stories, we now still give the very people in attendance a post-test for them to fill, and we can be able to tell how much has changed for that session. And we come back to follow up with the community to be sure that they can still recall what we told them. If you start telling them about, for example, calcium carbonate has done this, they may forget, they may remember it at the beginning of your storytelling session. And after the session, they may still remember, but days after, they may forget it. But if you say things that they relate with, words, and you use the words that they relate with easily in a story that stays in their mind, they are never forgetting it. Stories will live in their minds more than facts. You tell the stories the right way, the stories will live in them. They will, like we already saw in the introduction, the stories will have that influence live in their minds and change them to the best practice. Now, the beginning is true. I've already talked about this. In the beginning, how do you start it? What is your problem? What behavior exactly are you looking to improve? What do you want to change with the stories you are telling? That is the pressing problem. It could be that a policy maker has approached you, that we have observed that this community is reluctant or is hesitant to vaccination. How do you think we can fight this vaccine hesitancy? And then that could be one of the ways to show that you need to use a storytelling. Or it could just be that somebody has cited it somewhere in research that storytelling is a possible solution to what the person is doing. I've talked about this, but as I'll be going now, I'll be going gently so that everyone can understand the community diagnosis. This is from the trans-theoretical model of change, where you are able to have a discussion that will help you to know the barriers, what are facilitators, the coping strategies, lived experiences, real-life data, practice experiences, policy experiences, just baseline stories. When you are diagnosing, you are talking with the community and getting all of these. What you get from there will give you a clear understanding of your community, or if it is a school, or if it is a church community, you are able to diagnose it to help you know what stories you can tell. So you can see on this other diagram, we have the stages of change according to the trans-theoretical model of change. I already listed them. There are 5 of them. We have the denial, we have pre-contemplation or denial, we have contemplation, we have preparation, we have action, and we have maintenance. As I already indicated earlier, all of these are what will determine the type of story you are telling. If not, you are going to tell a story that will bring no impact. You are going to be telling a story that people are already aware. You'll be preaching a practice that people are already practicing and are not even planning to change from the practice. So you'll be wasting time if you don't diagnose the community. It's like a doctor treating, just looking at the patient and assuming the illness and giving it the treatment. So for the evidence synthesis, where do you get the data you synthesize? We have data sources. You could actually, from your community diagnosis, you listen to stories. If 2 or 3 people talk about an experience, for example, it's beginning to tell you that it is something that is happening in that community. And you can now, it could be something that can trigger you to find out how or what is the best practice that can change this community from this to the step that is above where they are currently. It could be scientific or research data. Most of the time, depending on whether it is to the policymakers, it is scientific and research data. Or other times, if we are going to meet the locals, especially the non-literate, sometimes it is from their lived experiences, what they have lived, that we use to develop our stories. So we search and then we grade existing evidence so that we can now, that is the difference with the stories the parents told and what we tell, because our own stories are from evidence. If we are telling you to wear a face mask, it is not because we think that you can wear the face mask and do some criminal activities or deceive people, but we have proof that wearing a face mask will prevent you from contracting airborne diseases. So we are not telling you stories from our head. We are telling stories that are founded on research, on evidence. There is evidence to prove that what we are saying is the best practice. Or we are actually saying what research is saying about the practice. If we are talking against female genital mutilation, we are looking for enough evidence to bring the consequences, to show the community how bad female genital mutilation is and its consequences. We are bringing that in our story, not because we are saying it from our heads, but that is what evidence is proving. That way, communities know that, yes, hey, this thing we have been doing, we have been wrong and we did not know. By the time you are saying, by the time you tell a story that tricked the community and you find them very silent, you know that you have touched a topic that a lot of people have been guilty. It becomes like a sermon, but it is still, as I said, non-violent. You communicate a message and people are guilty and are ready to change without feeling that you attack them. It's just the guilt comes naturally from the story you tell. You just come and dramatize a story. You don't call anybody's name, but you make sure that the evidence is in the story and they can see it, and they are immersed in the story to the level that they are imagining what if they had been the ones in the shoe of maybe of the victim in the story. And that way we are driving change across communities. Then for the evidence statements, we develop evidence statements from plain language summaries, recommendations. It could be policy briefs or meta-aggregated qualitative data. Just get it and put in a way that even a 5-year-old can understand what your story is talking about. By the time you start telling them that all this, what you are saying has been proven to work in this country, and in this country, and in this country, it did like this, and this is how it affected the people, and now they are living like this. People are scared and they can live better. They can adopt better behaviors. talked about the coming of the two rivers, the science and the arts, because the art is coming. The artist is in his stories. He knows the art theories, whether he's choosing edutainment, entertaining and educating stories at the same time, or he's taking stories that are just entertaining, stories that are educating. And then the storytellers, they know their art theories that they apply in each story, depending on the audience they are going to meet. If they are going to meet people from the ministry, for example, the way they craft the stories is different from when they are going to meet like people who have not gone to school. So the two rivers must meet and agree, and then they proceed with taking the message to those who are supposed to get the message. And then we have the living stories. Living stories, we did a project where we were using storytelling to fight gender-based violence in a community hit by a crisis. And sometimes you go and you tell a story and a lot of people, they understand with you and they are ready to move to the higher step of change. And then 2 months later, you discover that they have gone back. Maybe you meet a woman who complains that they are living with an abusive partner, and you tell them stories, and they are ready to move. They are ready to move away from abusive partners, and 2 months later, they are back with those partners because their partners they need something that they cannot get on their own. Maybe it's financial, it is maybe they need empowerment. So that brings in the concept of living stories, where we have to go back to see how your story is moving. Is it progressing? How did you leave from denial? You leave denial and you move to contemplation, to preparation, to action, or you are backsliding and getting up and backsliding and all of that. That is where the concept of living stories come in. And then the storytelling proper. Where to tell the stories. In Cameroon, in the Muslim community, there are certain things that you cannot joke with. You cannot tell stories, even if you want to entertain people. There are certain things that they don't joke with, and they don't eat things like pork. So if you are mentioning in your story, you are having a story that has to do with something that is against their culture and tradition, you may actually get them uninterested if you say things that make them feel like you attack their culture. So you just have to know, where do you plan to tell this your story? So that you also know the kind of words you can pick so that you don't go and you get the wrong outcome. And then when to tell the stories. When to tell the stories, all of these have something to do with the community diagnosis. You must know the members of the community. And sometimes we have gone to storytelling sessions with different stories written, and we ended up not telling them. Why we ended up not telling them was because somebody told us a story that we felt that the community would relate to the story more than one we had. And we used their story and we told it back to the community. What we call inoculation stories, when you take the stories from the community, a story from the community, and you tell it to the bigger community for everyone to learn and understand what is happening. We call it the inoculation stories. So you just make your plans. If you need to do it in the open, are you going to organize the people of the community in the community hall? Is it going to be in church, in school, maybe in a political authority's home? You have to identify these and prepare before time. And then what do you need to have in place? If you are addressing a crowd, you know the people you have invited for your storytelling session. You have to be sure that you have all the logistics in place. If not, some people will feel your post-test just anyhow. It will look as if it's a pre-test because they have been present. They have enjoyed the fun of seeing many people gathered, but they have not gotten the message. So to be sure that everybody has gotten the message, the audience that you have invited have gotten the message, you have to put all the logistics in place so that with your pre and post test, you can now know. And it is okay if the impact is not much. If the impact is not as much as you expected, it could be that you did not diagnose well, or that is just a true picture of the community. It's true that you may want to change something, and a community is reluctant to change, and they will still tell you that it is normal only for men to eat gizzard, and women should not eat gizzard, for example. So in that case, you have measured the hesitance and the hesitancy, and you can come back. You can come back to it, make sure that you move them, continuously tell them stories that will move them from that stage to the next stage. So the questions you set in your pre-test, you set questions around the knowledge they have gained. The questions about the knowledge they have gained will be, for example, what is climate change? And then you ask questions about intentions. The intentions will be like, what will you do if this? So you are asking them in your pre and post test what they will do. They are now bringing a situation to see if the stories they have listened to have changed their intentions of what they can do in future, if they can be ready to adapt or adopt a new behavior. Then we look at what we call green and red stories. Green and red stories, and a green story is not a positive story, and a red story is not a negative story. I want to quickly clarify this. A green story is simply a story that is progressing and is progressing towards the outcome. And a red story is a story that is not going towards the outcome. It may just be stagnant without progressing. If, for example, if a young person goes to school and is hoping to get a job, after schooling, they don't have a job, they are in a red story because they are looking to get a job or to become entrepreneurs. They don't get it. So you are staying at one point. It's like when you take a groundnut seed is red. It has a potential to, when you plant it, it has a potential to grow into a short herb that will bear more fruits. So when it is green, it means that there is more fruits. But when it is red, it means that it is just the way it was and it has not changed. So you would be able to tell from when you do your pre and post test if the story was a red story or is a green story. Because if the community is still where they were at the end of your storytelling session, it means that it has been a red story. So like I said, in your post test, you are looking at how much knowledge has been changed. The people who thought that rape was only a crime that is committed by men and not women, do they now think that it can be committed to by women? You are looking at that knowledge, and then you are now asking questions about intention. Some people in the beginning, they will say that they don't know what to do, but in the intentions now, they can now say you that this is what I will do. So they are having intentions to do something. Meanwhile, at the beginning, before the storytelling session, they did not know about the idea. They did not know what they could do. But after the storytelling session, they can now tell you that, oh, I can do this. So that is building intentions and their behavior. That is how their behavior is changing. And you can now, from after the post test, you can tell, as I was indicating earlier, if your story was a red or a green story. Unfortunately, this is also the end of my story. Thank you. I'll be glad to welcome some questions.
Hello, Alvin. Thank you so much. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go on with the question.
All right, thanks. This is Lavenda, and Dan has just dropped off. I think she has a problem. Thank you so much for that very well elaborated presentation on storytelling as an initiative in coming up with an aspect of knowledge translation in today's real world. I mean, researchers are doing a lot. Me being part of them, we're really doing a lot, and inside time that the information that we gather, the data that we have, be disseminated out there in a very accurate manner with quality and transparency to enable even the community living at the grassroots level to have this impact and to experience the change that we advocate for. So that was a very nice presentation. I really thank you for that. I would love to welcome this, to open this session for any question, any comment. In case you have a question or a comment, the floor is yours. Feel free to react, feel free to mute. I can start with Emily. Yeah, I think Emily has raised her hand because she's reacting somewhere. Emily, just tell us your experience. One thing that I really need to understand is the aspect of attitude. We really need to know how will these people welcome this story. You've presented it. I understood that part, but we have to understand that people are different, communities are different. Example you gave is going to, let me say, a Muslim community, and you want to give a story on maybe pork, people eating pork, and these people are against this. So this is just an example. Again, people are having different beliefs out there, and the aspect of co-creation that you came up with is really key, because we need these people to be part of these impact stories that we give out there or we publish and put in the shelves as well. So anyway, let me give others to talk. Emily, please go ahead. Emily, can you hear me?
Thank you, Alvin, for... Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Lavenda, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Alvin, for such a wonderful presentations on the usefulness or the impact of storytelling. And I can say it's a very good approach to present our findings as researchers. Many a times we are normally not mindful of the needs of communities, and we go there with our complex works, not even wanting to understand whether they are in the mood to listen to what we are saying, and just present our findings in terms that, or even words that they cannot understand. And I believe this approach of storytelling is a good idea that can bridge the gap between research and the translation aspect, because when you embrace the art of storytelling, normally even someone who is not well learned might be interested in wanting to hear what you say, depending on how you say it as well. And also, I will want to echo the fact that you have mentioned in your presentation that depending on what you want to tell or the story you want to tell to the community, it's important to understand the different factors of storytelling or the different aspects of storytelling, because you can't just go to a community and decide to tell a story without having considered the factors such as when to tell, as you have said, on how to say it. So I think as researchers, we have a lot to learn when sharing the outcomes of our research in a way that the community can then intake, translate it for it to have impact in their day-to-day lives. And personally, I'm challenged, even though I've done an impact story, as Lavenda had said. We have a lot to learn to make sure that whatever we do as researchers doesn't just end in our desks, but also translates to impact and is meaningful to the people who we are championing. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for that comment that you just said. Yeah, the next person I'm going to call, let me go through my list. Dr. Ageve, please just give a comment on this presentation. And if you have a question, you can also point it out. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lavenda. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Today's presentation was a very great presentation. And just to begin from where Emily has left, actually, the presenter has rightfully tried to inform us that indeed that storytelling can help link researchers with the communities, and also it can also help link the scientists who usually have complex data, because we can be able to use this storytelling to translate that complex data into some meaningful narratives that are very significant, and also they are very relevant, and especially to the aspects that are happening currently. Because when it comes to research, research is meant to inform, research is meant to influence, and also research is meant to solve some of the problems that among them you mentioned, like you mentioned, like the gender-based violence, you mentioned about the flooding, the droughts, and indeed you have just tried to help tell us that this is one of the key method we need to integrate even in our proposals when we are writing, as an avenue that we can use even to engage stakeholders, because from this we can be able to hear their voices, we can be able to hear their perspectives, and from this we can be able to even create some dialogue or some collaboration. And lastly, also from the way you have been able to explain, you have clearly told us that storytelling is very key, because it can also help inform policies. And so that means that this is the way to go. It is a way to embrace, even as we continue looking for ways in which we can address those problems or those issues that we as human beings we are going through. And thank you very much. I think we need to continue discussing such and see how we can integrate science and arts so that we can move forward together as a group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ageve. Also, I think when we're telling these stories, we really don't need to target the community. Again, I think not all the experts, or rather the elites, are aware of whatever the community is going through or whatever we are going through. So yeah, I think the community, not the community per se, but the audience also plays a critical role, especially during the research finding dissemination. Okay, the next person will be Washington. Kanyangi, go ahead. Washington.
Hi. Yeah, Lavin. So just to build on the conversation, I'd like to say that storytelling is an innovative way to increase the uptake of adaptation interventions, So it is a matter of changing their minds to transition to innovative adaptation ways. Yeah, thank you. Though that was an ambush, Lavender.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, so also when coming to interventions that we we take that the ARIN team focuses on, we really need to also involve them in co-creating those ones as well. Okay, so I'll give this opportunity. I think we kind of finalizing. I'll have like 2 more people. I really don't know if someone has a question and I'm leaving them behind. Okay, silence means no question. Next person, Winnie, do you have any comment on this presentation? Winnie? Okay, probably Winnie can't hear us. I'll welcome Dr. Atela before Dr. Kinyi closes for us, just to give us the general insight from this discussion. Prof, kindly.
Yeah, thank you, Lavenda. I wasn't prepared for the ambush, but to say the evidence, pathways to making evidence clearer and impact clearer is becoming a key debate and a key area of discussion in the current discourse around research and development. And so really trying to find ways in which we are able to innovatively strengthen the evidence into impact, ways that align to the different audiences, like communities, ways that appeal to non-academic audiences or participants is very critical, and is a frontier for research, because for a long time research and evidence uptake has been sort of perceived many times. A lot of the researchers, what we do is to do the research and then convene a policy roundtable, present that technical research, and then assume that that is part of an impact pathway. But that is not the case, because then it becomes just more of awareness that this was happening, but in terms of really ensuring that it links and it creates impact, that becomes very weak. So I think the ideas around storytelling, and because the context within which we are operating are very complex, storytelling and innovative participatory approaches to showcasing evidence and impact and trying to get this in the mainstream livelihood systems of people is something very, very innovative and would like to pursue and engage with. You might be aware that at the moment at the Africa Research and Impact Network, we are pursuing a number of projects that are looking at evidence, uptake, and impact, because that impact part is a very strong component of our work. One of the projects we are doing together with the AFIDEP, the Africa Institute for Development Research, is on evidence, institutionalizing evidence into the policy systems, or the use of evidence in decision making or into the policy system. But what we find out in this is that there are ways in which established systems have really perceived evidence, and there is really a big gap in terms of the kind of evidence that policymakers would want to see or want to use, or what they use, and the kind of evidence that is coming from research. And part of that is because of really the question around attitude, questions around perception, questions around legitimacy, whose evidence is more important. And I've seen most of that being brought up in this presentation. So you'll realize that government, like we've been trying to work with the government, the Ministry of energy, and of course, even climate change and health, you realize that they mainly value evidence that aligns to some of their plans, development plans. For instance, if the Ministry of Energy has the integrated energy plan for Kenya, for instance, that to them is like the Bible. So any evidence that is not aligning to that plan, then it means that it's actually non-applicable. And that is a problem, because a lot of investments in research are not necessarily aligned with these developmental plans. And if so, sometimes we find that the developmental plans are still relatively general, and research is more focused and specific. So getting that alignment is a problem. But storytelling can actually help us bridge those gaps. How do we align? How do we ensure that research that is happening makes sense to someone else, even though they believed in something else? But we can tell the story, give try to influence the attitude, the perception, the culture shifts, to be able to then broaden the thinking, and to be able to enable them see evidence as something that is available, is something that can have different pathways and can be adopted, not necessarily because it has to align with the development agenda or issue that you believe in, but try to ensure that we leverage on the advantages that different forms of evidence bring on board, and we open our scope to various innovative ideas that can come to support and enhance what evidence use, and of course research impact. So this is very important. And towards the end of the year, we'll have major events focusing on issues of evidence uptake and pathways to really realizing impacts from research. And storytelling is for sure one of those pathways that we want to pursue in a much more deeper perspective. So this was very relevant, and I really hope that we can continue with this conversation and to build it up. Thank you very much, Lavender, and to our great presenter. Well done and congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Alvin, as well. So we really have noticed that the impacts that we need actually in having those roundtable discussions is just an impact pathway per se. It's just that it's not inclusive in a manner. It doesn't bring all together all the stakeholders that are necessary. Okay, thank you, Prof. Akinyi, I'll welcome you to close for us this meeting, and in case you have any
Thank you very much, Alvin.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Alvin, for that very informative storytelling session. I actually quite got to learn a lot, and something that is very important that I got to learn from you today is that we share somehow as Africans, we get to share some of these common cultural practices. You mentioned the issue of Giza being a preserve of the man of the house, and it also happens that is also one of our cultural practices. So it just gets to show us that as Africans, we really have a lot in common, and despite our geographical differences, we still have a lot that we have in common. But then now the challenge that comes with storytelling, especially in the sense that, just like you rightly put it, research doesn't have to be in print. So sometimes research can be the key output, the key lessons derived from a particular research can also be imparted through orally, passed down from one generation to the other. So the challenge here that we have at the moment is, given that some of us have grown with our grandparents and we grew up being told stories about some of these great activities that happened some of these things you might not be able to read them on any book, any article, but then it's that first-hand information that you got from some of the people that actually were present at that time. But then now the challenge is, how can that storytelling culture be maintained from one generation to the next? Given that also some of these, now I didn't participate in some of the activities, for example, the fight for independence in Kenya, but my grandfather actually did. So whatever information, the stories that he would tell me are those that are kind of, I will be issuing or giving or telling rather secondary information. I'm passing it down. But then now the next person will not be in a position to pass it down without distorting it. So how can that culture of storytelling be maintained without necessarily distorting the primary information? That is not something that you can respond, but it was just a matter of us trying to brainstorm some of these issues that are arising. And also the other issue that I find with storytelling, especially in form of research, you find that sometimes storytelling the target audience doesn't have to be the lay people. You can tell your story to some of the people that you consider experts in a particular topic. And the challenge there is, how do you now relay your information by telling your story in a matter to someone who is more of an insider, who knows the nitty gritty? So how do you deal with that complexity of, they already know what you're going to tell them, or some of the complex issues that you would want to tell them, they already understand that. So it becomes also a challenge in dealing with that. But be that as it may, you correctly inform us that in relation to storytelling, it's important that you simplify your narrative, because it becomes pointless. It becomes pointless and pointless when you telling your story in complex jargons that no one understands. And also something that I also wanted to bring up that I think is also very important is the impact of storytelling, especially to our children. I was reading an article some time back that when you tell a story even to an unborn child, once they're born, they will when they hear that story, they will always remember. They may not say it, but they will act in a manner to show that they actually recognize that particular story. So that also brings me to the impacts of storytelling, the psychological and educational benefits of not just to the community, but also to our children. So that's that. Anyway, just some few announcements that we had for the fellowship program. Having had the first quarter's meet and greet session with our fellows in January, we're having now the second meet and greet session next week on Friday on 24th. So we hope that all our fellows will be able to attend. We will be sending an email to that effect very probably on Monday, detailing the agenda of the meeting and how we want it to run. Particularly, we'll be taking stock of the first quarter's activities, and we will be letting you know. We will be reviewing our strategies for this quarter actually, and the next quarter, and probably the entire year. You will also have the chance to talk to us and tell us what activities you might want to be included in whatever it is that we already have in place for the program. So we hope that all of you will be able to attend. And secondly, we also have on 31st May, we will be launching our mini grants, ARIN's mini grants. So, and we will be co-hosting this with Taylor and Francis. So, Taylor and Francis. So we're hoping that you will be able to attend so that you get to understand more about ARIN's mini grants and which ones are available at the moment, ready for application, and which ones are upcoming. So we will be giving you an overview of that, and also capacity building initiatives that Taylor and Francis and ARIN are organizing for our fellows. So we hope that you will all be in attendance for that. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending today's review session. And we look forward to seeing one another soon by God's grace. And may you all have a blessed weekend ahead. Thank you. Lavenda, are we taking a photo?
Sure, yeah. Emily or Nancy, can you help us do that? Emily?
Sure.
Okay, when you're ready, let us know. Meanwhile, for the LIPS program, I sent a form. Kindly fill the form. It's a survey form that just shows how EIP has been institutionalized in your various organizations. It's a brief form. It will take a maximum 10 minutes of your time. So I'll appreciate that. I need to share it with the team by Monday. Okay, thanks. So meanwhile, we can turn on our cameras and give a very broad smile. I mean, it's a good Friday. Let's all smile. Fiona, kindly turn on your camera and smile. Florence. Okay, Emily, when you're ready, let us know.
Jerry, remove the view. It's obstructing the. Kindly unpin yourself, Jerry. Or any host can unpin Jerry so that I get the gallery view.
We can't hear you, Emily.
We are good.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend ahead. Let's touch base on Thursday for our LIPS meeting. Okay, bye.